The town of Reddick, Maine was one of those places that didn't exist until you needed it to. A quiet dot on the map between two larger dots and a road where the forest pressed close enough to touch your car windows. You didn't go to Reddick to live. You went there to hide. At the edge of town, past the faded sign that read, "Welcome to Reddick, population 482." There was a narrow dirt path leading into the Ashenwood forest. Locals called it the Whisper Trail. It wasn't on any official map, and if you asked around, people just shook their heads and told you the same thing. The trees remember, son, best not to walk where they whisper. But Elliot Price wasn't the type to believe in local folklore. He was a 37-year-old engineer from Boston, practical to the point of arrogance. And on a week-long solo camping trip to clear his head, in reality, he was running not from anyone, but from himself. 2 months ago, his younger brother Mark had died in a car accident. And Elliot had been behind the wheel, drunk, angry, guilty. So now, here he was, unloading his tent and pack from the trunk of his SUV at the forest edge. The sun had already dipped behind the pines, leaving long shadows across the clearing. One night, just one night alone in the woods, then I'll go home. He turned on his headlamp, adjusted the straps of his pack, and stepped into the forest. Ashenwood Forest had a strange rhythm. It wasn't quiet, not exactly, but it felt listening. The sound of wind through branches had a pattern, like breathing. Elliot walked for 2 miles until he found a flat clearing beside a narrow creek. He pitched his tent, gathered dry wood, and lit a fire. The glow threw orange light onto the trunks, and for a while, he felt almost peaceful. He took out his brother's old flask, dented, engraved with M+E 2007, and stared at it in the firelight. "You were supposed to drive," he whispered. "We're always supposed to drive." A breeze passed through the trees then, soft but cold, and the flames bent sharply toward him. Somewhere behind the fire, deep in the dark, a voice whispered not quite words, but something like, "Elliot." He froze. The forest went still. Then silence. He laughed nervously and shook his head. "Wind," he said out loud. "Just the damn wind." But the voice came again, closer this time. "Elliot," he spun toward the sound. Flashlight beams slicing through the trees, and saw nothing but trunks and mist. But his heart didn't believe the lie his brain was telling. He stayed awake most of the night, staring into the dark. The next morning, he woke to a pale gray light and the sound of trickling water. His head hurt, maybe from the whiskey, maybe from the fear. He decided to explore deeper into the forest before heading back. Half a mile from his camp, he found something strange. A rusted signpost, half buried in moss. The writing had nearly faded, but he brushed away the dirt and could make out one word, cemetery, that didn't make sense. The map he'd downloaded showed no graveyard anywhere near this place. He followed the overgrown trail behind the sign. The deeper he went, the colder it became, unnaturally so. Breath steamed in front of him. Finally, the trees opened into a small clearing surrounded by black stones. Not stones, he realized. Gravestones, half toppled, cracked and swallowed by roots. Most were too old to read, but one in the center looked newer, the name carved clean and deep. Mark Price, 1990 to 2024, he should have driven. Elliot stumbled back. "No," he breathed. "No, that's not real." But the ground beneath the grave pulsed, just once, like something shifting under the earth. And then he heard footsteps behind him. He turned, and there he was. Mark, Same blue jacket. Same scar above the left eyebrow. Same wide, accusing eyes. Except his face looked wrong. Like it was stretched too tight over the skull, skin pale and damp, as if the grave had spat him back out. "Hey, brother," the figure said softly. His voice was wet, like air passing through mud. Elliot stumbled backward. "You're not real." "Dead?" The creature smiled. "Yeah, that's what they told you. But the forest remembered me. The forest remembers everything." The wind picked up, and the trees began to creak. Not randomly, but in rhythm, like murmuring voices joining in some invisible chorus. Elliot turned and ran. Branches slapped his face, roots clawed at his boots, and behind him, that wet voice called out, almost tenderly, "You left me to die, El. You left me in the dark."
Hi.
He tripped and fell, sliding into a shallow ravine. His flashlight rolled away, its beam spinning across the trees, and for a moment, he saw faces in the bark. Dozens of them. Human faces pressed into the wood, eyes closed, mouths open in silent screams. When he grabbed his light again, the faces were gone. He staggered to his feet, panting, and ran until the forest finally thinned and the whispering stopped. He didn't remember making it back to the road, only knew that when the first car appeared, he was waving his arms and crying. The driver was a park ranger, mid-50s, weathered, calm-eyed. "Easy, son," the ranger said, helping him into the truck. "You look like hell. What happened out there?" Elliot told him everything. The whispers, the grave, the thing that looked like Mark. When he finished, the ranger was silent for a long time. Then he said quietly, "Ashenwood's not on the park map for a reason. That's old land, older than Reddick itself. It used to be a family graveyard back before the town moved east." Elliot's hands shook. "Then the grave I saw." "There's no grave for your brother out there," the ranger interrupted. "I checked the records myself. Mark Price was cremated in Boston, wasn't he?" Elliot stared at him, mouth dry. "Then what did I see?" The ranger didn't answer. He turned the truck around and drove back toward town. But as they passed the tree line, Elliot noticed something. A shape faint, but visible in the reflection of the window. Mark was sitting in the back seat, smiling. 3 days later, the ranger returned to the same spot at Ashenwood Trailhead. Elliot's SUV was still there, doors open, camping gear scattered. The keys were still in the ignition, but Elliot was gone. Search teams scoured 10 miles of forest over the next week. Nothing. No footprints, no scent, no remains. Until one morning, a hiker found something half buried near the creek. A wooden carving, small enough to fit in a hand. It was a man's face, eyes closed, mouth twisted, mid-scream.
And on the back, carved with perfect precision.
And on the back, carved with perfect precision, he should have driven. The sheriff took the carving to the ranger. The old man turned it over slowly in his hands, listening to the faint whisper of the wind through the trees. "Another one, the forest remembered," he said softly. Then he looked out at the dark line of trees swaying in the distance, and for just a moment, he could have sworn the pines were breathing. Story 2. They found the cabin that wasn't there yesterday. There were 4 of them. Tom, Jenny, Red, and Lucy. All friends since college. All now brushing up against 40, clinging to the illusion that a weekend in the woods could slow down time. They left Portland on a Friday afternoon, following a hiking blog's promise of a hidden waterfall in Warren Hollow. a patch of Maine forest so deep it still didn't have cell reception. The route was supposed to loop 5 miles, gentle terrain, perfect for camping. But when they reached the trailhead, the sign was barely legible, the wood split by age and moss. Reed laughed nervously. Looks like a horror movie setup already. Jenny, always the realist, said, "Come on, guys, it's just trees." By dusk, they had hiked 3 miles. The air was heavy, muffled, no birds, no bugs, just the sound of boots crunching dead leaves. When they checked the GPS, the map glitched. No signal, no coordinates. "It's fine," Tom said, voice a little too confident. "We'll set up camp here." Find the waterfall in the morning. They built a small fire. The smoke drifted strangely sideways, carried by no wind. Somewhere in the dark, something cracked like a branch or a footstep. Reed looked up. "Probably a deer," Lucy said. But her voice trembled. They slept uneasily that night, for sleeping bags around dying embers, surrounded by a forest that didn't breathe right. Morning came gray and cold. Jenny woke first. She stepped outside the tent, stretched and frowned. The trail they'd followed yesterday, wide enough for 2 to walk side by side, was gone. Where there had been a clear dirt path was now thick undergrowth, tangled roots, and the same patternless trees stretching in all directions. "Tom," she whispered, shaking him awake, "something's wrong." They spent 2 hours trying to retrace their steps, circling, marking trunks with their knives. Every time they turned around, the marks disappeared. Reed swore he saw them blink out of existence, like scratches on fogged glass. At noon, exhausted and frightened, they found something impossible. A cabin. Small, square, made of gray timber with a slanted tin roof. Smoke curled lazily from the crooked chimney. "It wasn't here yesterday," Lucy said. Tom nodded slowly. "Then maybe someone's home. Maybe they can tell us where we are." Reed hesitated. "Guys, there's no road out here, no power lines. We'd live in the middle of nowhere." But Tom was already knocking. The door creaked open before Tom touched it. A man stood there, old, thin as kindling, with pale eyes like milk. "Ow." "You're lost," he said softly. It wasn't a question. Tom blinked. "Ow." "Yeah, our map isn't working. We camped nearby and you shouldn't have," the old man interrupted. His voice was a whisper and a growl at once. "Not on their ground."
Whose ground? Jenny asked.
"Whose ground?" Jenny asked. He stared past her at the trees. "The hollow keeps what it's given." Before they could reply, he stepped back. "Come inside. The woods don't like daylight much." The interior smelled of wet wood and iron. Everything inside looked handmade: chairs, shelves, even the plates. But there was no dust, no cobwebs. The air felt recently disturbed. Reed whispered, "This place can't be lived in. It looks new." The old man poured water from a kettle that hadn't been on any stove. "You should eat," he said. "It'll be dark soon." "We just ate," Lucy said. He smiled faintly. "Not yet. You haven't." Jenny looked at her cup. The water inside rippled, though her hands were still.
"Oh."
While the others distracted the man, Red wandered toward a shelf stacked with books. One lay open on the table, a leather-bound journal. He flipped a few pages. The handwriting was cramped and shaky. May 12th, 1978, the forest moved again. Heard them whispering near the creek. They say they want a name. June 2nd, they gave the cabin back. Said it's mine as long as I feed it. July 19th, fed at the strangers. Reed closed the book. We have to go, he mouthed to Jenny. But before he could speak, the old man's voice came from directly behind him. Reading without asking, he said calmly, "That's rude." Reed jumped back. "We were sorry. We didn't mean you were meant to," the old man said. His pupils were gone, now only white spheres staring out from his face. The hollow brings the hungry here. The cabin does the rest. Jenny grabbed Lucy's arm. "We're leaving." The man tilted his head. "He'll try." They bolted into the trees, branches whipping their faces. The forest was wrong-shifting, closing. Every direction looked the same. Behind them, the cabin's door slammed shut with a sound like a heartbeat. Tom shouted, "Keep the sun on your right. East, go east." But there was no sun anymore. The sky had gone colorless, the light dimming as if swallowed. Lucy screamed. Reed turned in and saw the cabin standing between the trees again, 20 feet ahead, as if it had run to meet them. Its door was open. Inside was dark, but something moved, to shadow shaped like a man, but made of mist and bark. They turned back, but now another cabin stood there, and another, dozens, forming a circle around them, each one breathing smoke. "Run," Tom yelled. They scattered, but the woods folded in, collapsing like lungs exhaling. Jenny felt hands cold, wouldn't grab her ankles and drag her down into the soil. She clawed at the dirt, screaming as Tom and Reed tried to pull her free. For a moment she surfaced, her eyes wide, gasping, and whispered, "They're under us." Then she was gone. Reed stumbled back. Jesus Christ, she's gone. Tom turned toward him, mouth opening to shout, but his voice came out wrong. Deep, hollow. "Reed," he said. But it wasn't Tom's voice anymore. It was the old man's. Lucy woke in the cabin. The fire burned green. The old man sat in a rocking chair, his eyes closed. On the floor beside him were 3 wooden carvings, small, crude but unmistakable replicas of Tom, Jenny, and Reed. Their faces were twisted mid-scream. Lucy crawled backward, hitting the wall. "Please," she whispered. I just want to go home." The old man smiled without opening his eyes. "You are home." He pointed toward the door. "They'll show you." Lucy turned. Standing there were her friends Tom, Jenny, and Reed. But their skin was gray, grainy. Their mouths were seams of bark. When they breathed, dust spilled from their lips. "Lucy," Tom said softly, wooden fingers stretching toward her. "Stay. It's easier when you stop fighting." She grabbed the poker from the fire and swung wildly, striking Tom's shoulder. Splinters flew. He didn't scream, just tilted his head as sap dripped down like blood. She ran for the door. The forest outside was brighter again morning somehow. She ran until her lungs burned, until she stumbled onto a dirt road. The car was parked their ranger vehicle, engine idling. A man inside lowered his sunglasses. "Ma'am, you okay?" Lucy sobbed. "You have to help me. My friend's there in a cabin. It wasn't there yesterday. The ranger frowned. "Cabin? Out here?" He scratched his beard. "You mean the old logging shack that burned down in the 70s? "No," she screamed. "It's there." He looked past her, toward the tree line. "There's nothing there but stumps." She turned. He was right. No trees, no cabin. Just empty field. The ranger radioed for backup, called an ambulance. They found Lucy dehydrated, hypothermic, but alive. She was taken to a hospital in Bangor where she told her story again and again. No one believed her. 2 weeks later, she hanged herself in the shower of her room. When they cleaned out her belongings, the nurse found something under her pillow. A wooden carving, rough and small, shaped like a woman with terrified eyes. On the bottom, carved in careful letters, they found the cabin that wasn't there yesterday. A month later, the same ranger drove back to Warren Hollow. The road ended at a wall of trees. He got out, lit a cigarette, and walked a few yards into the forest. For a moment, he thought he saw smoke rising thin, gray curling between the trunks. Then it vanished. When he turned to leave, he noticed something nailed to a tree, a sign, fresh wood, freshly painted. Cabin for sale. Inquire within the wind moved through the branches, whispering words that might have been his name. He dropped the cigarette, crushed it under his boot, and walked quickly back to his truck. Behind him, deep in the trees, something knocked softly 3 times, like on a door. Knock, knock, knock. Story 3. The campfire that burned in reverse. Rachel Hines told herself she wasn't afraid of the woods. She'd hiked all her life. She knew the smell of pine needles, the creak of old branches, the hush that settled just before dusk. But Ember Lake was different. 10 years ago, something terrible had happened there. A camping trip gone wrong, a friend missing, no answers. Rachel had been 20 then, young enough to believe the world was explainable. Now, she was 30, divorced, and tired of running from memories. So, when she saw an online post for a private guided overnight near Ember Lake, she took it as a sign. Maybe facing the place would finally quiet the nightmares. There were 4 others in the group. Kyle, the Overeiger survival vlogger. Nora, a shy botanist. Ben, a middle-aged teacher on sabbatical. And Jack, the guide, tall, quiet, with an old scar across his jaw. They met at the trailhead just before sunset. Jack handed out maps no one really needed and said, "We'll make camp by the lake. Firewood's already waiting." Rachel frowned. Already waiting? Who set it up? Jack smiled faintly. "You'll see." The trail wound down into the valley, the trees growing taller and closer, their branches knitting together overhead like ribs. By the time they reached Ember Lake, the sky had gone purple. The water was still as glass. On the far bank, a single campfire burned, tall, steady, silent. Out. No smoke. "That's odd," Ben murmured. "No smoke at all." Jack didn't answer. He just walked to the fire and gestured for them to sit. The flames glowed in amber gold, but the heat flowed away from it, like standing near a freezer door. Rachel sat slowly, eyes fixed on the fire. Something about it felt reversed, like watching footage play backward. The logs weren't burning down. They were reforming, uncharring, stitching themselves back together in slow, unnatural motion. Kyle lifted his camera. "Man, this is wild. Look at that. That's some chemical trick, right?" Jack's eyes glinted. "Not a trick. Just a memory." Nora frowned. "A memory of what?" Jack looked out over the lake. "Of what happened here." They ate quietly, their food tasteless. Rachel couldn't shake the sense that the fire was watching them. Its light flickered across their faces, but not in rhythm with the flames. It was almost like the fire was sinking to their breathing. Later, after everyone turned in, Rachel couldn't sleep. She lay in her tent, listening to the soft crack, crack, crack of the fire outside. Except it wasn't crackling. It was whispering. Her name. Rachel, Rachel. She sat up, heart hammering, and unzipped the tent. The fire was burning backward again, the wood rebuilding itself, ash lifting upward and reassembling into solid matter. And inside the flames, she saw faces. Emma, her best friend from that old trip, the one who'd vanished. Emma's mouth was moving soundlessly inside the fire. Rachel stumbled closer. Emma. Oh my God. Emma's head turned, her eyes black hollows. Her lips formed one word. Run! Rachel screamed. The others rushed out of their tents. Jack was already sitting by the fire, staring into it calmly. What the hell is going on? Kyle shouted. That thing's talking. Jack didn't move. It's showing her. It always starts with the guilty one. Rachel gasped. What do you mean guilty? I didn't do anything. Jack finally looked at her, and in the reflection of his pupils, she saw flames spinning backward. 10 years ago, he said softly, 5 campers came to this lake. Only 4 went home. Rachel froze. How do you know that? Because the forest told me, Jack said. I listened. Ben stepped forward, angry. You brought us here for this? Some sick ritual. Jack smiled faintly. The hollow feeds on regret, burns what it's given, and when it's full, he gestured to the fire. It rewinds. The fire suddenly blazed bright, and for a moment the forest vanished. In its place was a snapshot of another night, 10 years ago. Rachel saw her younger self laughing with Emma beside the lake. Then the laughter turned to shouting, push, a fall, a scream, and Emma disappeared beneath the black water. Rachel's knees buckled. No, she whispered. That's not what happened. She slipped. The fire hissed. The flames now moved entirely in reverse, sucking in sparks, devouring light. The others backed away as the air grew cold. Frost spread over the grass, over their boots. Nora grabbed Rachel's arm. We have to leave. But the fire wasn't just burning backward now. It was unmaking the night. Stars faded. The trees lost their shape. Even sound seemed to rewind, the crackle of fire turning into dull thuds. Then came the first voice from the lake, soft gurgling. Rachel, Emma's body rose from the water, pale, its waterlogged, eyes open. Rachel fell to her knees. I tried to save you. Emma stepped onto the shore, water pouring from her hair. You ran, she whispered. You left me? The others screamed. Ben tried to run, but the ground melted under his feet, the dirt turning to ash, the ash to nothing. He vanished into a hole that hadn't been there a second ago. Kyle swung his camera wildly, shouting, "This is fake. This is CGI. It has to be."
The lens cracked.
The lens cracked. His screen filled with static, then a reflection of himself inside the fire, screaming silently as his own image burned away. Jack stood and faced Rachel. The forest doesn't care about truth, he said. Only about balance. Then the fire went out, but the light remained, glowing from beneath the earth. Rachel woke to daylight. The others were gone. The lake was calm. The ashes of the fire lay untouched. But when she stood, she realized something horrifying. The ash was moving backward, climbing onto the logs, rebuilding the campfire stick by stick. She stumbled away, but every step she took, the world behind her reversed grass, rerouting, footprints erasing, light fading. She ran until her lungs screamed, until the trees ended at a dirt road. A park ranger's truck sat there. The driver, a grizzled man with kind eyes, leaned out the window. You okay, miss? Rachel sobbed.
Please help me.
Please help me. They're gone. Everyone's gone. He nodded slowly. You came from Ember Lake. She nodded, trembling. He sighed. Haven't heard that name in a long time. Burned down in the 70s. Her voice cracked. No, it's there. The fire's still burning.
The ranger frowned.
The ranger frowned. There hasn't been fire there in 50 years. He looked past her, toward the forest, only the one that burned backward. A week later, a state search team found a camera near Ember Lake. It belonged to Kyle. The footage was corrupted, but a few minutes played clearly. Shaky shots of trees, laughter, a campfire burning bright. Then, suddenly the footage reversed. They watched the group appear from smoke, their laughter turning to screams played backward. One by one they vanished, until only Rachel was left, looking into the camera, whispering words no one could decipher, until the final frame, where her reflection appeared behind her, face covered in soot, smiling. Investigators sealed the site, locals said. The air near Ember Lake still smelled faintly of smoke, cold chemical wrong. A year later, a man named Aaron came hiking through the same valley. He was a filmmaker looking for locations, loved eerie, forgotten places. By dusk, he found the perfect one, a clearing by a silent lake, and at its center, a circle of blackened logs. He unpacked his drone, his camera, and lit a small fire to test the lighting. The flames caught immediately too easily and rose in a slow, graceful spiral.
The air shimmered like heat mirage, though the evening was cold.
The air shimmered like heat mirage, though the evening was cold. Aaron smiled. Perfect shot, he said, pressing record. Behind him, a woman's voice whispered, "Don't feed it." He turned, but there was no one there. Then the camera light flickered, the battery drained, and the fire began to burn in reverse. Aaron's scream never made it to tape. The final frame of footage was the fire rebuilding itself into perfect, untouched logs.
Then darkness.
Then darkness. They say the woods near Ember Lake are quiet now. No birds, no wind. Just stillness, as if the world holds its breath. But sometimes, if you camp there on a windless night, you'll see a glow deep among the trees. Fire that burns the wrong way.
And if you listen close enough, you'll hear whispers between the cracks of the wood.
And if you listen close enough, you'll hear whispers between the cracks of the wood. Not words exactly, more like memories trying to come back. The forest doesn't forgive, it rewinds.